Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today we're wishing a very happy birthday to Huey Lewis of Huey Lewis and the News. Now, when people talk about important rock and pop bands, they rarely mention Huey Lewis and the News, and that's always puzzled me because they were so hugely popular among so many music listening demographics. They sold so many records. They had the music on MTV all over the radio. They were even so popular that someone may have even stolen one of their songs for another famous movie, but that's another story. But the point is, they were everywhere. And they were a band that was pretty hard to dislike. And I think maybe that's why the critics don't really talk about them. Because there's a saying in the news business that if it bleeds, it leads. And things that are controversial sell. And there was nothing particularly controversial about Huey Lewis in the News. They became successful the old-fashioned way, 10 years of hard road gigging before they hit the big time in the early 80s. Huey Lewis hitchhiked across the US and later in Spain, playing his harmonica and singing along the way, prior, of course, to the band getting famous. And that's obviously a fun story, but not particularly controversial. And the music wasn't controversial, nor was it particularly innovative. It didn't try to change music, and it didn't even follow trends. Look what was happening in the early 80s. You had New Wave, which was really big, synth rock, they were neither. You had sort of in Britain the rebirth of heavy metal, the second wave or the new wave of British heavy metal. You had the early stages of American glam metal getting going, and they weren't any of that. What were they? What were Huey Lewis and the News? They were a band that said, to hell with all of these trends. We're going to play rock and roll music that could be written in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or with the benefit of hindsight, even the 90s and early 2000s. And what's going to make us successful? We're going to be really good songwriters. We're going to perform really well. We're going to work really hard. We're going to have good production values. And we're going to have an image that, much like the cover of Sports behind me, says, join us for a beer in the bar, because they were that kind of band. You don't need to dress up in anything peculiar. You can just come as you are. And in an age where people were wearing leather jackets and rubbing their crotches and, spandex and hair and all of that, no, don't get me wrong, that was lots of fun for a lot of people. But the average Joe wasn't dressing like that. The average Joe was dressing like these guys, and they were sitting in places like that. And finally, Huey Lewis said, right, this is for you. This is for the people who don't really roll with the tide so much, but want to just do what we've always liked to do, but do it better and in a memorable way. And that's what Huey Lewis and the News were able to accomplish. And they rode that fame all the way to the top of the charts. Now, they kind of vanished from public consciousness in the 90s and early 2000s, even though they remained a staple of FM rock radio throughout that time. In recent years, Huey Lewis has come back. He's got some hearing problems, but he's been doing interviews. He's been writing about his life, talking about his life, and they're finally starting from the public to get the accolades that they always deserved. Of course, the highest accolade of all is the one that they achieved in the 80s, which is public popularity. People bought their albums and they loved them, and the radio stations played them because people wanted to hear the music. Simple as that. Now, after all these years, the band that wrote It's Hip to Be Square, well, it's not square any longer to like Huey Lewis and the News, because once enough time has passed, the famous becomes the obscure, and if the obscure is destined to become the cool, then it's all kind of full circle now, isn't it? So, happy birthday to Huey Lewis. Too hip to be square, too square to be hip, but always a fan favorite and a damn good musician, as were the rest of the News. We'll see you next time. Take care. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe. That helps, not my rules, YouTubes. Bye, everyone.